Steve, in your book, True Legends, you talk about a Smithsonian cover-up whenever giant bones are involved. So I want to ask you the question that everybody always asks. Where are all the giant bones?
It's interesting, Tim, because of the bias of the Smithsonian and their contempt for out-of-place artifacts. Every time giants were found, it didn't matter if it was on the West Coast, the Arctic, the Antarctic, believe it or not, the East Coast, the Ohio River mounds, they always have a fabulous cutoff point, meaning once the Smithsonian is notified and those bones are sent to the Smithsonian, they're never heard from again. And there's denials. What is this cover-up? And I'll tell you the bottom line. They do not want people to understand that the sons of God, the fallen angels, saw that the daughters of earth were fair, mated with them, and produced a literally new race of hybrid beings that the Bible calls the Rephaim. And the Rephaim are with us today. They're genetic trace, they're genetic markers. And when we get into super soldiers, Tim, they can claim whatever they want to claim, and they'll claim anything and everything apart from the true biblical origin of giants.
So Steve, even during World War II, there were reports of giants and cannibalism coming out of the Solomon Islands. What was that all about?
After World War II, people couldn't reconcile the fact that a lot of servicemen, U.S. servicemen, had been eaten, cannibalized, as well as Japanese. And the fascinating investigation I've come up with was the fact that the Solomon Islands are riddled with stories of cannibalistic giants and even living giants to this day. And even living giants to this day.
Look, look. Look, look.
Back in 2005, I was actually stationed or deployed to Qatar. It was a completely normal mission for us. We were not alerted for anything abnormal. It was in the middle of the day. I remember coming into base in Afghanistan called Bagram. Back in those days, it was pretty austere. It was an old Russian air base that we were using. It's basically built in a bowl in the mountains where you have to stay high right up in the last minute, and then you basically come screaming back down to land. The area to the side of it was called the Valley of Death because during the Soviet days with the Mujahideen, they had fired their rockets into a lot of the helicopters, so you could see all kinds of wrecks and stuff in the valley below, which for the most part I didn't pay attention to because I was a little busy getting the airplane on the ground safely. We landed and basically was told to taxi to the very end of the tarmac. And like I said, it was middle of the day, very hot. I remember that. We opened the doors and unloaded the equipment that we had brought in. And then we were met at the aircraft by what we later on called the babysitters. But they kind of introduced themselves and said, hey, no cameras, nobody's taking pictures here. We're moving some high-value stuff. When the load got there, we're very, of course, curious to see what it was, because that's just the way you are when you're told that you're not allowed to have a camera. They say this thing had been dead for maybe a day or two, but it stunk. And when I say stunk, I've smelled dead things before, but this had a more of a, I want to say a musky stink, kind of a, not really a decay, but more of a, if somebody hadn't taken a shower in like 10 years type of a musky stink is all I can tell you. And it was basically a dead guy. And this guy was extremely large. And when I say large, our pallets are basically, if I remember correctly, about 9 by 12 feet or so. This guy was laying in a fetal position on the pallet. So he filled the pallet. We estimated his size at approximately 12 to 10 feet tall. I did see his skin color. I was expecting somebody of more Arabic descent, being in Afghanistan and all. I know he was dead, but he was very pale, very white. Another thing that us and the rest of the crew did was we took our feet. He was in a fetal position, so you could take your feet and put it kind of, you could see where his feet were there, and they were wrapped up. He did not have shoes on, but he had like, looked like he was wrapping them in some kind of a canvas type stuff, but we were sticking our feet up next to his feet, and his feet were extremely big. We know that the standard weight on one of those pallets is about 1,500 pounds, and I do remember that the loadmaster did the weights, and it was around 1,100 pound guy. The pallet sits on dunnage. You know what dunnage is? It's basically like railroad ties so that you can get a forklift underneath it and pick it up. So it was on dunnage, and basic dunnage is like maybe a 4x4. And then the pallet is, say, yay thick. It's actually aluminum and balsa wood. And this guy, I mean, laying down was very, very wide. I mean, and he was, like I said, he's in a fetal position. And you go up and just, you hit it. And of course he's under a tarp and all that, I understand that. But he was a dense guy. We questioned the babysitters of, hey, where'd you get this guy? And some of the Army guys there with him relayed to us that this guy had, I guess, been living up in the mountains next to a village where the villagers basically treated him like a god. I did infer that they were making sacrifices to this guy because they said they found bones of people. The giant supposedly, like I said, I was not there, supposedly killed the first team that they came across. He was extremely big and fast and agile for a guy that size. They sent up another team, and when the second team went in there to get him, supposedly he had already started to basically eat on the team that had been killed the first time. They then grabbed a helicopter, and the helicopter brought him down where we picked him up. After we loaded the Giant, it was just a standard mission back. We took him all the way back to Al Udeid in Qatar, where he was transloaded onto another airplane. I believe it was a C-17. I was done with my mission then. I got away from it. I was done. I did ask some questions later of, where it might have gone. And as the grapevine goes, it was probably taken back to the United States. And the words I heard were right, Pat. But again, I don't know.
antecedente sumamente controvertido nos lleva hasta Australia, donde entiendo se encontraron osamentas de un cuerpo gigante.
Aquí entramos en ciencia arqueológica dura, Ignacio, y en quizá el documento más fidedigno científico actual de la existencia de estos gigantes. Esto se descubrió hace muy poco tiempo, como te dije, en Australia, y lo que se presenta aquí es un cuerpo que, según los investigadores, mide por lo menos 5,2 metros de altura.
Más de 5 metros de altura.
Efectivamente. Por lo tanto, es primera vez que nosotros lo mostramos, y al menos dentro de los datos de arqueología que uno puede exhibir,
mira ese hueso.
Esto fue corroborado por la Universidad de Adelaida, particularmente por el profesor Hans Zimmer. ¿Habrán sido estos gigantes de 5 metros los que tomaban las tazas que estaban en Laos? Tema conspirativo propiamente tal. ¿Por qué? Porque se ha generado en Estados Unidos el último tiempo una inmensa controversia que ya ha llevado a los juicios y que tiene que ver con estas imágenes que estamos viendo acá.
¿Qué es eso, Doc?
Gigantes encontrados en muchas partes de Estados Unidos a principios del siglo XX, 1902, a fines del mismo siglo XIX, también se encontraron. Se ha puesto en antecedente de que este instituto smithsoniano hizo desaparecer miles de huesos, miles de huellas de todos estos descubrimientos que se realizaron a fines del siglo XIX y principios del siglo XX de gigantes en toda la región de Norteamérica. Entonces, según todo esto, se generó el Instituto Smithsoniano. Sí, durante muchísimo tiempo negó estas cosas, pero en el juicio apareció una huella clave, que fue un fémur humano de 1,30 metros. Desde el momento en que los jueces encontraron este fémur de 1,30 metros, comenzó la desclasificación y comenzamos a conocer la verdad. Ignacio nos ha puesto sobre la mesa muchísimos documentos, textos de la época, de los periódicos, y no solamente del New York Times. Entonces, se ha guardado esto en silencio. ¿Por qué se ha guardado en silencio? ¿Qué hay de malo en saber que habían gigantes en la antigüedad?
¿Dónde está el temor?
¿Dónde está el temor? Quizá el temor para todo este mundo ultramaterialista, ateo, anticristiano, era que, claro, que estos documentos de alguna forma van a corroborar los relatos bíblicos, cosa que a muchos no les gusta, pues.
The chroniclers of Peru recorded that the bodies and bones of giants were incinerated by the priests of the Holy See as they labored to extirpate idolatry among the natives. But the records also indicate that not all of the bones were destroyed. Many of them were confiscated and fell into the hands of the Spanish Inquisition. In other words, into the hands of the Church of Rome. What most people don't realize about the Roman Catholic Church is how intensely involved it is in both the reconnaissance and recovery of arcane relics relating to the true narrative of prehistory. So while the rest of the world is being distracted with the convenient fantasy of Darwinism and the evolution of the species, the Vatican is quietly gathering evidence that tells a very different story. For centuries, the agents of the Holy See, especially the Jesuits, have been occupying strategic archaeological locations and seizing critical artifacts all over the earth.
Tuvimos la noticia de que en Loja hace 31 años se había encontrado un esqueleto de 7 metros, presuntamente humano. Entonces decidimos investigar a Alfonso y fuimos al sitio mismo del hallazgo y encontramos el esqueleto desarmado. Tal como se observa, los huesos parecen muy antiguos, bien conservados e impresionan por sus dimensiones.
Ahí viene el Génesis, en el capítulo 6, versículo 5. Y hubo gigantes en aquel tiempo, jayanes, hombres de nombradía, los que construyeron la Torre de Babel, la pirámide de Keos y otras obras monumentales gigantescas en el mundo.
Llegamos finalmente a Guayurunuma, que en idioma antiguo significa el cementerio de los dioses. Y este es el sitio donde hace 31 años se descubrió al gigantesco fósil.
La cabeza, viste cómo será aquí, el seso hallaron, y la costilla hallaron como abajo así, era de gigantes, y la costilla era más grande de mi brazo, pero el grosor era así, una chulla costilla. Un diente sí habían allá, también era diente, sí. Este también lo llevo el parcita.
Only the truth can prepare us for the lie that's coming. The greatest cover-up in history is the cover-up of history. It's really simple. Those who control the past determine the future. Secret knowledge is the most precious commodity on earth. It's the currency of the occult and the Luciferian elite. Knowledge is power. That's not just a popular expression, it's a fact. Especially knowledge pertaining to the Watchers, their hybrid offspring, and their lost technology. We have discovered that when following the trail of the cover-up relating to the world before the flood of Noah, all roads lead to Rome. The Vatican knows all the secrets. The popes and the agents of the Holy See have known about the giants for many centuries. In the last episode in this documentary series, we presented historical evidence proving that the bones of giants were recovered in Peru, Ecuador, and Bolivia by the Spanish conquistadors and Catholic priests during the conquest and conversion of the Incan Empire in the 15th and 16th centuries. Now, we're not just talking about some random fragments of bones that could have been mistaken for mastodons or giant sloths. Full skeletons and bodies of giants measuring well over 15 feet tall were discovered all over the land. The Inca knew about the giants. In fact, they believed that the massive megaliths found throughout their empire were built by a race of ancient giants before they were destroyed in a great flood. The mythology inscribed on the tablets and cylinder seals of the Sumerians was devised by the first civilization to emerge in the world after the flood of Noah, a civilization following in the rebellion of Nimrod and the fallen angels. It was in the plains of Shinar that the seeds of idolatry and sorcery were sown in every culture. When the people were separated at the Tower of Babel, they eventually spread out over the whole face of the earth, each group carrying with them artifacts from Sumer and fragments of knowledge concerning the world before the flood of Noah. Over time, only the most fundamental elements of pre-flood history remained in each culture, such as the gods descending from heaven, giants, a great flood, and the premonition that someday the gods would return and their empire would be restored. But a true and accurate record was preserved by God through the descendants of Jacob, the story of creation, the fall of man, the descent and corruption of the Watchers, the great flood of Noah, and most importantly, the incredible plan for the redemption of mankind through the sacrifice of God's own beloved Son, Jesus, were all preserved in the text of Scripture.
In a small village called Lepakshi in the state of Andhra Pradesh, we can find a giant footprint. Could this be Bhima's footprint? The locals here claim that it is not the footprint of Bhima, but belongs to his half-brother Hanuman, who also happens to be a giant. This footprint is more than 4 feet long. Is there any other giant footprint that locals agree that it is Bhima's footprint? About 200 miles from Bhima's stove in the outskirts of Bangalore, there is yet another footprint called Bhimana Hege. This footprint is about 2.5 feet long, and the giant who made this impression would be over 18 feet tall. The local people of Bangalore believe that Bhima did in fact leave this footprint. Remember, these quote-unquote local legends from various places of India are separated by hundreds of miles, and these people even speak different languages. Yet, all these disconnected pieces miraculously fit and match with the ancient Hindu scriptures. If a giant really built this huge megalithic structure, shouldn't there be other examples of gigantic structures in the world, also built by giants? Here is the well-known Stonehenge in England. In a book called Roman de Brute, written in 1150 AD, it is clearly documented that the Stonehenge was also built by giants. Why do both these megalithic structures, separated by thousands of miles, share the same story? Remember, both these sites have used humongous rocks that would be impossible to be lifted by ancient human beings.
History is being repeated. The days of Noah are returning, and men's hearts will fail them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming upon the earth.
Hace un tiempo atrás apareció unos documentos desclasificados del FBI. Y lo que dicen estos documentos, que lo tengo acá, Ignacio, lo guardé aparte para que... Este es el documento del FBI, para que todos los amigos lo vean en pantalla, desclasificado hace no mucho tiempo. Lo que dice el informe exactamente lo tenemos en una declaración, Ignacio, para que todos los amigos lo escuchen en casa y que saquen sus conclusiones. Pero que quede claro, este informe que tenemos, según el FBI, según esta desclasificación, hablaría de unos gigantes interdimensionales que desaparecen en la Tierra a su propia voluntad, Ignacio. ¿Vamos a ver la declaración?
Vamos.
Algunas partes de la nave avistada llevaban pasajeros y otras eran operadas a control remoto. La misión es pacífica. Los visitantes planean quedarse en el planeta. Los visitantes son como seres humanos, pero mucho más grandes en tamaño. No encarnan en terrícolas, sino que vienen de su propio mundo. No vienen de otro planeta, como nosotros referimos, sino de un mundo etéreo que se interpenetra con el nuestro más allá de nuestra percepción. Los cuerpos de los visitantes e incluso las naves se materializan al entrar en vibración con la materia densa de la Tierra. Los discos, naves, poseen energía radiante y rayos que pueden desintegrar fácilmente cualquier otra nave, y para reingresar al campo etérico simplemente desaparecen de nuestra visión sin dejar rastro alguno. La región de donde vienen no es un plano astral, corresponde al locas o talas. Los estudiantes esotéricos comprenderán estos términos. No utilizan sistema de radio, pero probablemente usan un sistema de radar que les permite divisar el lugar de apertura o materialización.
Ahí tenemos la explicación a este documento desclasificado recientemente, pero que data de fines de la década del 40.